Okay, get my gavel out, make it official. And good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Gig Harbor Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is February 7th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. We have one item on the agenda this afternoon. This is numbers PLCUP 22-0003 and PL-DR-22-0041, a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow for the construction of a 598 square foot accessory dwelling unit as a detached accessory apartment on a 0.36 acre property that will also be concurrently developed with a single family residence at 7402 Soundview Drive. My name is Andrew Reeves. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, who the city has selected to hold certain land use application hearings like this one. And today it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether this proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and the specific requirements for approval of a conditional use permit that is also an accessory apartment under the municipal code. To that end, I received and reviewed several exhibits in advance of the hearing today. These were exhibits labeled A through J, that's the right letter. And these include a staff report prepared by city staff, the application materials themselves, various architectural and civil plans, sort of detailing what I want to keep wanting to call it an ADU, and it is an ADU, but here we're also calling it an accessory apartment, what it will look like, along with the single family residence that is being built, the justification sort of addressing the conditional use permit criteria that the applicant prepared, information on the notice that was provided in relation to the application, as well as today's hearing. A couple of comments, one from the Squaxin Island tribe and the other from the Nisqually tribe, both essentially indicating that they themselves didn't have any concerns, but be notified if the Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation, or DAHP, had any concerns, which it does not appear that they did. Then an administrative decision on design review that we can talk about that was made by the city, expressing approval for the proposal, and some historic information on the property. So I'll go ahead and admit those exhibits into the record. Should anyone have additional exhibits they'd like admitted into the record, let me know when it's your opportunity to testify, and I'll go ahead and address admitting additional exhibits at that time. All testimony today will be under oath or affirmation. That's because for my decision to be appealed under our state's Land Use Petition Act, or LUPA, the recording of today's hearing, as well as the admitted exhibits, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. Finally, the order that we typically follow here in Gig Harbor, and I believe we're going to follow today, is first I'll swear in city staff, who will give a brief overview of the proposal and any interesting or unique elements about it, and staff's conclusions and recommendations, as it were. Then from there, we'll go to the applicant representative or their team to see if they have additional thoughts or information they feel that myself or members of the public should be aware of in advance of by making a decision on this proposal. Then we'll see if there are any members of the public interested in testifying, and if so, they will have that opportunity. And then at the end, if necessary, we'll go back to the applicant and city staff to respond to any such testimony. Currently, I think the only person I see as an attendee looks to be a city staff member. So we will check when we get to that point, but so far it looks like a pretty quiet group and small group, and we weren't expecting a stampede at the door, as it were. So with that, why don't I go ahead and get Jeremy Hammer sworn in on behalf of city staff when we get going. So do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And can you just state and spell your name for the recording?
Yeah, Jeremy Hammer. That's JEREMYHAMMAR. Associate planner with the city.
Okay, thank you. And if I don't know what's going on there. Okay, thank you. Please go right ahead, Mr. Hammer.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves, and good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the hearing examiner's decision on the Buck accessory dwelling unit conditional use permit, which is encompassed in PLCUP 22-0003. The proposed accessory apartment would be located at 7402 Soundview Drive, and we have the listed owner as Templeton Development LLC. The applicant has proposed the construction of a 598 square foot single level accessory apartment, which is commonly known as an ADU or accessory dwelling unit. Accessory apartments may be conditionally permitted in the R1 zoning district, which the site is located. And the applicant has prepared a conditional use permit justification letter in support of the request, which is included as Exhibit D to the staff report. The 15,682 square foot site is located within the R1 single family zoning district, as well as the height restriction area, and is surrounded on the north, west, and south by R1 zoning and R2 medium density residential to the east across Soundview Drive. Access from the site will be provided from Soundview Drive. The site has a slight slope from the west downwards towards the east at roughly a 3% grade. All proper noticing was provided for this application and public hearing. Staff received 2 comments for the notice of application. These comments are included as Exhibits G, which is the comment from the Squaxin Island Tribe of Indians, and Exhibit H, which is a comment from the Nisqually Indian Tribe. Neither provided opposition, and once again, those are included as exhibits to the staff report. City received no comments in response to the notice of public hearing. And staff has reviewed the proposed conditional use request for consistency with all relevant provisions of the City of Gig Harbor's Municipal Code and Comprehensive Plan. This analysis is detailed in Section 8 of the staff report, which I will summarize now. The proposal is consistent with the city's definition of accessory apartments set forth in Gig Harbor Municipal Code Section 1704-015, which is defined as a residential unit of up to 600 square feet with a functional kitchen, bath, outside entrance, attached to or on the same parcel as a single-family residence in a residential zone. Accessory apartments shall be under the same ownership as the primary residential unit, with the owner living on site in either unit. Accessory apartments shall not be condominiumized or otherwise sold separately. Accessory apartments are conditionally permitted in the R1 zoning district, as previously mentioned, provided that the conditional use permit decision criteria specific to accessory apartments set forth in Municipal Code Section 1764-045 is met. The proposed parking for the accessory apartment and single-family residence are located towards the west side of the parcel, with the garage providing the necessary parking for the residents and additional space outside the garage, providing parking for the accessory apartment. As this area is situated behind the proposed residence, it is effectively shielded from view from the public right-of-way. The proposed accessory apartment is located 10 feet west of the proposed residence and is shielded from view from the right-of-way. The accessory apartment has been designed to match the single-family residence in design and received administrative design review approval from the city. That decision I have included as Exhibit I to the staff report. The entrance is located on the north side of the accessory apartment, oriented away from the street, as the decision criteria specifies. The accessory apartment will be separately metered for water and will share a sewer stub connection with the single-family residence. Considering this analysis, staff recommends the hearing examiner conditionally approve the proposed conditional use permit for the Buck ADU. Should the examiner decide to approve the CUP, staff recommends the imposition of conditions outlined in Section 10 of the staff report. This concludes my brief of the project, and I am happy to answer any questions, Mr. Examiner.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. Okay, so I don't believe I've done one of these in particular thus far in the city. So I just want to make sure I understand kind of the way the code is set up. You do have a excellent and thorough analysis of section 1764-045 related to the review criteria for accessory apartments. But am I correct or incorrect in thinking, and not that I have concerns for this project, but that it also needs to meet the general review criteria for all conditional use permits in the section that is 1764-040?
It is my understanding that it would just be the criteria specific to accessory apartments.
Okay. Because maybe we'll come back after we talk. The language in 040 says that each determination granting or denying a conditional use permit shall be supported by written findings of fact showing specifically all of these things. I think maybe it's just a strange historic thing in your code. A lot of jurisdictions do have it set up where you've got the general criteria and then for very specific uses, additional criteria, and here clearly your code has that for this use for wireless communication facilities. They're the only two that are called out, but maybe when we go back around, you can give that a quick look and we can talk more about it. Again, I don't have specific concerns that those sort of general criteria for a conditional use would be met, but I just want to make sure I'm not imposing something or misunderstanding the code. So next question I had was in terms of the administrative design review. Nothing I need to do on that. Is that correct? That's just informing me that it happened. It's been signed off on, but I don't need to go look at paint color and all these things I'm not very good at.
No.
Okay.
And that was included on the notice of application and the notice of public hearing. And then I issued the decision in between the notice and today. So
yep.
That's all and that was.
You didn't basically say as much in your staff report. I just like to clarify that I'm, again, making decisions on the things I'm supposed to be making decisions on or not. So thank you for clarifying that. And then because it's fresh in my mind, because the last hearing we had was on something comparable, I suppose, but this is not an application in any way, shape, or form that would be approving the use for short-term rental, correct? Meaning this would only allow for the standalone ADU, which is in this case an accessory apartment, but where the property owner want to use that as a short-term rental on Airbnb or some other such rental site, they would need a separate approval.
Correct.
And I think that moratorium may still well be in place, but
yes.
not an issue here. I just want to be clear for all involved what is potentially being approved and what has been asked for, as opposed to, otherwise. So the thought here is this is sort of a mother-in-law. I assume long-term rentals are okay. People can rent it out for whatever the difference between short-term and long-term is in your municipal code, but not so much as a Airbnb, flip them every few days or week kind of a thing. Is that an accurate assessment of my understanding?
Correct. Yes.
Great. Okay. I think that takes care of the questions I specifically had. So if you don't mind looking real quick at 040 in conjunction with 045 in chapter 1764, why don't I go to the applicant next, and then maybe we can come back to you at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, and so I think we have two folks related to the applicant. Dan Hendrickson, I believe, is the architect. No, engineer. No, what am I doing wrong here?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And so he's the one of the engineers and site planners on the project.
Okay, sorry. Are you in the same room as Spencer Buck? And okay, I'm trying to figure this out. Why don't I start with Spencer Buck, who is listed, I believe, as the owner applicant on here.
Yeah, that's me.
Hi, Mr. Buck. Did you intend on testifying, or were you going to have Dan Hendrickson, or would you both? How would you like to proceed?
Well, honestly, I'm just kind of here to observe and be here to answer any questions. I don't necessarily have any specific testimony of anything.
Sure. Why don't I just swear you in just in case?
Sure.
I'm envisioning your hand is up. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And can you just state and spell your name for the audio?
Sure. It's Spencer Buck, SPENCER BUCK.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. So you are the property owner, and am I correct in my understanding that sort of this is a new residence being built, and then the ADU will be detached and just sort of behind it, as depending on where you're looking from? Is that kind of an accurate understanding?
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a new primary residence for myself. The main residence will be, and then behind that, I mean, if you're looking at it from the street, the main right of way, the ADU or accessory apartment, as it may be, is basically in the back. It's almost completely out of sight. But yeah, that's the intent of the ADU. My parents are retiring pretty soon and wanting to travel and move out of state, so they want to have somewhere here to come visit kids and grandkids when they need to. So that's going to be their long-term residence when they come back here.
Huh. All right, you win all the gold stars for filial piety. Well played. That said, did you follow my conversation with Mr. Hammer? I mean, clearly, if that's your plan, this is not really an issue. But it's not to say you couldn't potentially get approval to use it for short-term rental, say when your folks are not using it, etc. But you would need a separate permit from this process were this to move forward. Did that make sense? And do you understand and acknowledge that?
Oh yeah, completely understood. And that it has not really crossed the mind, since that's going to be their, come and go as they please type residence. But I'm also aware of a moratorium on the, short-term rentals too. So hadn't really planned on that whatsoever.
It might be a hot button issue in some communities in terms of should we not, etc. So if I have any opportunity to give just a tiny bit of clarity on the record and make sure everyone understands what's being approved or not, I try to do that. So it sounds like you have a plan where this is a non-issue for one, and you understand sort of what all this would entail. Also, that said, and I'm happy to talk to Mr. Hendrickson as well, but you had an opportunity to review Mr. Hammer's staff report.
Yeah.
And the recommendations at the end are fairly straightforward. He essentially says, that you need to get all your permits before you start working, and that you build something that looks like what Mr. Hendrickson and his team have put together. Do you see any issue with complying with those conditions? Were they to carry into my final decision?
No, not at all.
Excellent. Anything final or further you would like to add, Mr. Buck?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I'll stay on, obviously, in case there are any questions arise, but I think that pretty much sums it up.
Great, thank you. Well, why don't we go to Mr. Hendrickson just to see if he had anything he wanted to add. Mr. Hendrickson, shall I swear you in?
Sure.
Why not? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in testimony you give here today?
Yes.
And if you could just state and spell your name for the audio.
Daniel Hendrickson, DANIEL HENDRICKSON.
Thank you. And your role one more time.
I am the civil engineer on the project and the client's agent, the applicant's agent. And I agree with Mr. Hammer's findings. I think that what we have put together for Mr. Buck does meet city code for an ADU and a single family residence. And we're excited to see this get going.
Excellent. And were this to go through, I think this would be the sort of end of the permitting stage for the bigger permits. Obviously, building permits, all the things you deal with in your day-to-day life all the time. But is the hope to break ground when the weather gets nice?
Potentially, yes. As soon as we can pull permits from the city, we would like to get going. Obviously, spring's a great time to start building, get away from rain.
Yeah, well, the end of spring when the rain has stopped, one supposes. But yeah, just sometimes, it's nice to be able to give a sense of when things might happen. So good to know. I don't believe I have any other additional questions for you. Did you have anything else you wanted to convey?
No, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hendrickson. Looking at our Zoom, it looks like one of our planners, Robin Bolser Grant, is on as an attendee, but I think that is it. So why don't I go back to Mr. Hammer? Mr. Hammer, did you have an opportunity to look into the thing I may have threw you off about, not intentionally, just...
Yeah, I was able to pull up a couple different staff reports and decisions from previous conditional use permits for these, and they had only used the criteria from 045.
And that is not quite the same, I would say. Let's humor me.
Sure.
I am confident you, my friend, are bright enough to do this on the fly. Could you maybe, just in case I'm correct about my interpretation of the law, just quickly read through 040 and tell me how you believe this proposal would meet A through D, just very simply.
Yeah, so I believe the proposal is consistent with the description and purpose of these R1 zoning district. It remains a single family use. The granting of the conditional use permit would not be detrimental to public health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare, and will not adversely affect the established character of the surrounding neighborhood. And we've kind of ensured that through the design review process, just making sure it's consistent with single family residential and the design standards found in the code. The proposed use is properly located in relation to other land uses. As I mentioned earlier in the my staff report and overview there, it's surrounded on 3 sides by single family zoning and medium density residential across the street. I think that remains consistent with that. And then the final one, the site is sufficient size to accommodate the proposed use, and all yards, open spaces, walls, fences, parking, loading, landscaping, and other such features are required by the title or as needed in the opinion of the examiner. I'm the reviewer on the building permit for this and the single family residence, and they meet all the dimensional standards needed for those permits. So I can safely say that it meets that.
Okay. Well, there, excuse me. My apologies. We've now done the belt and suspenders approach just to be sure. But thank you, and appreciate you doing that on the fly, as it were. I just, a challenge when you have a changeover. I'm a stickler about certain things, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Mr. Hendrickson, I'll just ask you, did you follow and track what was happening there, and you concur with Mr. Hammer's assessment of the criteria in 040?
I do concur.
Excellent. Okay, with that, I actually don't think I have anything else. Mr. Hammer, anything else you wanted to discuss or share before we close the record?
Nothing else from the city's end of things.
Okay, well, I don't always get to do this, but in this case, I think I can say, having reviewed the record, the exhibits A through J, as in Joseph or John or any of those J names, A through J that were provided, as well as the testimony I've heard today, and Mr. Hammer's helpful, another J, Jeremy Hammer's helpful quick review of the criteria in both 040 and then the thorough review in the staff report of the criteria in section 1764-045. I am confident that with the conditions that have been recommended by staff, that this proposal can move forward. So my intent is to have my team put together a decision, and we'll get it issued here in the next couple of weeks. So with that, we can conclude the hearing, and thank you and good luck, and wish everyone safety and good health. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.